Bob Seeley's here with me, former MP for the Isle of Wight. We've already been looking into quite a few clips from yesterday. There's another one we should look at as well, Bob, which was tremendous. Yesterday, Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, did the morning round, as they like to call it. Didn't come on this show, funnily enough. Went on everybody else's show, didn't come here.
She still got beasted, though.
I mean, yeah, she did. And she actually, surprisingly, by Richard Madeley.
I know.
You know, not known for his tenacity.
That's glorious.
You know, but it's absolutely amazing. He decided to ask her about her CV and why it was full of lies.
Why did you say that you'd worked at the Bank of England for a decade when in fact it was, well, it wasn't even 6 years, it was 5? I mean, that's exaggeration, isn't it?
Well, I worked at the Bank of England for 6 years, between 2000 and 2006. I was employed by the Bank of England, including I spent just over a year at the British Embassy working in the economics section there, supporting the government and the bank.
Why did you say it was a decade?
Well, I think you're taking... I think it's one interview. I worked at the Bank of England for 6 years. I worked for then at Halifax Bank of Scotland, I think, for 3 years after that. I became an MP when I was 31. But I think in the end, people want to judge me on the job that I'm doing today as Chancellor of the Exchequer. I'm qualified to do this job. But in the end, people are going to judge me. Am I growing the economy? Am I improving their living standards? And I'm determined to do just that.
No and no, I think, are the two answers to those two questions. But also, she's trying to make out it was an interview she gave to somebody, which is the reason why people made the mistake that she worked for the Bank of England for 10 years. No, it was on her CV. She had to change her CV as a result of it being discovered that there were lies on it. She was caught out. So, and she never did answer the question.
No, she didn't. And I have to say it's pretty depressing. And I know that the problem is when the reaction you're going to get from most people is that, oh, politicians lie. Actually, that is not the case. Politicians, a good politician will try to argue his or her case honestly and get the facts, obviously, to fit their interpretation of life. That is part of politics.
That's fine. You can use facts to your advantage, but don't change them.
But the problem is, when you have a government like this Labour one that is systematically lying, and their attitude is, we're morally superior, so that's OK, and when you're lying to the Tories anyway, and we think they're scum.
And they were evil and much worse than us.
Exactly.
So we're much better than them.
So we can lie and it's OK. The problem is then, eventually this government will run out of honesty road, but nobody will believe a word they say.
I think we're already there, actually.
It's happening sooner than we think, unfortunately for them.
Well, look at the Times front page this morning, and I've been saying this for a couple of weeks now, that this guy, who is, of course, one of Keir Starmer's big mates, Lord Hermer, who's been, you know, a lawyer in good standing for many a year. I don't take issue with the fact that he's represented some dodgy characters, because obviously some people do that, and that's fine. And if you're a lawyer, you might have to represent the likes of Jerry Adams, but it's rather sort of coincidental, is it not? I was going to say, it's very coincidental that all these human rights lawyers end up always defending people and presumably getting money from the public purse or somewhere for people who relentlessly attack our country, or certainly against the interest of the British state. And this is the way that international law, as interpreted by these left-wing lawyers, always seems to be used against this country and against democracies more generally. But what I worry about more is how he now conducts himself as Attorney General, because we got the news this week that not only does he accept that there are certain conflicts of interest that he shouldn't really have, he now says that he recuses himself from actually giving advice to the government, which surely makes his job redundant, doesn't it? If you're Attorney General and you can't advise the government, what's the point of it?
I mean, if that was one or two, fair enough. But seemingly all his clients have spent all their time attacking the government, and he's been representing. The amount of recusing he must be doing is pretty much almost anything.
You know, my Lord Hermer, can you give us some advice on this? No, I'm afraid I can't, because I used to represent Fidel Castro. You know, there's no chance of that. It's just ridiculous. He's now being accused of basically obstructing government and actually not doing his job in an even bigger way, delaying policies because he's taking the view that if there's likely to be a legal challenge to something, we shouldn't bother doing it.
How long do you think he's got in the job?
I would say he's out of the job by March, I think, because I think the pressure's too much now. I mean, it's been relentless for about a month, and it's not getting any better.
No, I mean, this is a sort of, there is a drumbeat of sort of, is this person right for the job? Which is, Jenrick is calling him out very well. Rob Jenrick is doing a great job on it. But there isn't a smoking gun from a specific current issue.
No.
That's the thing. So he may hang on there. But I think he's terrible for the government because he reminds people that Starmer's a human rights lawyer with a hard left tendency.
Yeah.
Britain is always in the wrong.
And he's his mate as well, which tends to suggest, like the Tulip Sadiq case, where she could have gone before Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Instead of which it dragged on and on and on because she was Keir Starmer's best mate in politics. Yeah. Now she's likely to be extradited to Bangladesh.
I was going to say, is she actually going to be extradited?
Well, she might be. The fact that they're even talking about it is pretty embarrassing.
Do you think this is a great one? I mean, do we think Herman's going to have to give advice on whether she can be extradited?
That's a very good
Is he going
question.
to have to recuse himself because they're all dinner party mates, or is dinner party mate okay?
I know, this is the thing, and so it's a very cosy world that they all inhabit, isn't it? And basically they can't make proper judgments on things because they don't want to upset each other.
I wish somebody would redo the thick of it.
Yes.
But the trouble is, the writers have all gone a bit centrist dad.
Ian, what's his name, Armando, who I used to think was brilliant.
He's great.
Brilliant, but he's kind of lost the plot. He's gone all kind of Rory Stewart on
he's gone full on Alistair Campbell.
Yeah, absolutely right. But I mean, that's the other thing. Wasn't there not in that report that came out, the review from the Home Office the other day, which reminded everybody that at one point or other there was a review that they put out that said if you watch the thick of it and you like it, you might be a white supremacist.
Yeah, because that's evidence of being on the... And who was it? My former colleague, Rees-Mogg Jacob, had one of his tweets investigated.
Yes.
And if you like this sort of stuff, that meant you were suspicious. I'll tell you one other thing that really depresses me about the Home Office and why it's not fit for purpose and it's genuinely scary. For anyone to describe the grooming gangs as alleged...
Yes. Incredible.
I'm sorry.
That was incredible.
This is the worst scandal in our country since the enclosure of common land back in the early 18th century in the terms of harm that it does to people. And when you have a government department saying, well, this mass raping may have happened, it's alleged to have happened.
I mean, there are court cases still going through the system at the moment.
Please.
It is mad. Talk about annexing land, by the way.
Terrible.
The Telegraph's got a story saying a tenth of farmland is now going to be axed for net zero. Solar farms and tree planting will replace food production. I mean, how do they think that's going to play out? If you can't make food in the country and instead you're sort of growing electricity, if you like, so that people can get very wealthy on it, it's not a recipe for success, is it?
No, it's all a money. I mean, this is Lord Hermer is harming the government.
Lord Harmer, Keir Starmer. I mean, it's all certainly the same.
On a relatively low-level way. But he's survivable. But the damage that Ed Miliband is doing not only to this country in his sort of reckless deindustrialisation, but actually the damage he will do to Starmer's reputation, to Labour's reputation, I don't see how long he can survive if Labour is serious about getting more than 20% in the polls coming in the next election.
Well, Miliband's another one, isn't he? I mean, he was on the missing list yesterday, and we were sort of jokingly saying, has anybody seen him? And he sort of peeked his head above the parapet yesterday and started putting out a few tweets about how net zero is still very much what our focus is. But apparently on Tuesday, he was in Cabinet saying we can't have a third runway at Heathrow.
And the problem with this is that because this is all caught up in Labour's internal battles, we might get the third runway signed off, but the quid pro quo is going to be shutting down oil and gas in Scotland. So the front page of the Mail today is basically saying, prove you're on the side of growth, because the courts have basically said no to Jackdaw and Rosebank, and instead we're going to have more liquid gas that's going to come from the Middle East. We're going to be reliant on oil and oil
and we bring in
somewhere else.
gas from America, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
So, I mean, that is not, in fact, even if I cared about the green agenda, which I don't really, it's not greener. No, it's actually worse.
I mean, I do to a certain extent because it's important and looking after the world is important. But the problem is our green agenda is actually very ungreen. By offshoring our economy to China, which is building 2 coal-fired power stations a week, we are polluting the world in order to give ourselves slightly better emission figures. We should be onshoring, bringing back all this industry here and working out how to do it better than China, not building coal-fired power stations and reducing the cost of energy. You're right, it's a massive
con. And they're all swallowing it as if it's real. Let's get a voice note from James on the Labour Party.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn. We've got you. It's Friday. It's day 211 of this hapless Labour government. I mean, I can't believe it's only been 211 days. But we have had 74 different relaunches in that time. I mean, I wish they could turn the boats round quicker than they turn their policies round, because they haven't got a bloody clue. This week, well, we're going to go for growth. We've tanked the economy, so now we'll go for growth by building a runway that none of us believe in, by 2050. And we don't know how we'll build it, who's going to build it, but we'll just have a plan by the summer. Christ, it's do you think they just get to the end of the week, close their doors back at the second homes that we pay for all the heating for and just pay for in general, shut the doors and just go...
I mean, it is incredible, isn't it? And this is how the ordinary people of this country actually understand the world to be. Yeah. They can see what's going on. Yeah. You know, people are not stupid. They realise that this is all a complete smoke and mirrors job. And here's this latest announcement. The UK has announced up to £5 million worth of extra funding for education programmes, not here, not in France, not in Germany, in Tunisia, for potential migrants, in the hope it will make them less likely to make the journey across the Channel.
Again, this is one of these other big lies. If we spend lots and lots and lots of money...
Have a read of some Thomas Hardy and see if that will keep you in Tunisia.
But it's, okay, just on that point, what do they scrapped 17 million specialist maths education for bright kids from state schools.
Right.
Same day, they announced 17 million to UNRWA, the UN,
who have now been outlawed by Israel.
Yeah, right? And is full of Hamas supporters. Yeah. I mean, please. I
mean, it is ridiculous, isn't it? Now, one of the things we do on a Friday is we play out some gaffes that we've had through the course of the week. Some of them on this show, some of them on other shows, quite a lot of them on Kevin O'Sullivan's show, it has to be said. But here's one on my show, and it's about you, funnily enough.
Me?
Have a look. Yeah.
Right.
He hasn't got the backing. Apparently, he doesn't get on with Claire Rayner, or Claire Rayner doesn't like him.
Angela Rayner.
Sorry, Angela. I do apologise.
He might not get on with Claire Rayner either, but
but he's not getting the money.
Claire Rayner, of course, famously the mother of Jay Rayner, the restaurant critic, who blocked me on Twitter because we had a row once about whether or not there should be tips for people in restaurants.
Yes.
Very strange.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
I mean, I don't know if it's early onset Alzheimer's or what it is.
No, it's all right.
I do occasionally get these things wrong.
No, people do it all the time. But that's why we have these gaffes. There's loads of them. Don't worry. We're not singling you out.
I should make more.
We're not singling you out. I just thought we'd play you that way while you're here.